mingling. Come on in because the food and the drinks start at 7 after this panel. That's right. After. This is how we keep you here. You gotta hear it. Listen, before you get the freebies. Come on. Aaron, help me out and get those people in here when you get a chance. Thank you. I'm gonna let Aaron do his screaming for a second. See how loud he can get. Come on in. We're waiting for you guys coming in the door right now. Come on. We got this. I call people out. I apologize. If you guys want to get on stage right now, that might be better. David's over here. David, you're taking the end? Yeah, I'm good. Okay. You guys can sit anywhere over here in the meantime. Thank you. So you can free up some seats. All righty, we're going to get started this panel as we kick it off. We're going to jump right into it about new data deciphering the signal from the noise. And being in electrical engineering, signals and waves was my worst course, but I did well in the end. I survived. Nobody asked, but I'm telling you. Hey, let me introduce this panel to you guys. We have Salonis outside in the booth, but our speaker for them couldn't attend because he thought it was the right thing to do, which I agree with him. He caught COVID and wasn't able to attend today. So we kept him up there because we think he's doing the right thing by staying back and keeping us safe. So thank you. That was David from Salonis. But our other panels are here. We have Grant. He's analytics lead, a VP at Swiss Re. He's also president of Reinsurance Under 40. And he's the guy who brings in the right talent for you guys. And as David says, the fire of graybeards. We also have Rashad. He's a corporate VP at New York Life, focused on analytical innovations and adjunct professor of analytics at Mercy College. He's an angel investor who has supported over 70 plus startups. We also have Lynn. She's a managing director of EPAM. EPAM is North America's insurance advisory practice with many years of industry experience that's transformation programs that's enabled carriers in both underwriting and policy. We also have our very own David Gritz. He's a co-founder of InsurTech New York, working to build New York as a global hub for InsurTech activity. He previously served as the innovation director at SVIA and led product for Zero, a loss control InsurTech acquired by Everest Re. With that, over to you, David, with that jokes.
Thanks, Roy, and appreciate being up here with these panelists. And I think really you had a chance to hear some interesting perspectives today about what's possible with AI, machine learning, and being able to use different data sources. But ultimately, the quality of the data and the fidelity of the data depends on the availability of the data. So this panel, we're really going to talk about what's out there, what we can do to be able to use it, and then be prepared as an organization to use it. So I'm going to have Grant start us off. Being a reinsurer, you have the broadest span of perspective. You can see across what all your carriers are using plus your own data. Where are you seeing the newest data sources? Are more of it on the behavioral side, like we heard a little earlier about knowing your customer from the financial lines perspective, or is more of it about better understanding the environment, so geospatial type of data?
Thank you, everyone. I would say first, my background is largely on the primary side, and I recently have switched to the reinsurance side, and it's a very different game that we're playing in terms of the availability of data on the primary insurance side versus the reinsurance, right? So it's been a challenge in terms of reinsurer has a lot of visibility to the customers and so on, but at the same time, the sharing to some extent is not where it probably should be or could be to some extent, right? It's an understatement probably for some of the folks that worked in reinsurance at least. To that point though, I would say the biggest opportunity right now is really just a matter of the utilization of the data. Like there's a lot that's been out there, as you saw earlier. It's just a matter of how the companies are actually implementing it and executing it. A lot of the companies spin a good story, but on the reinsurance side, it's very difficult to really tease out the validity of that. So I would say it's very important for the primary carriers to really show they actually are getting the lift, they're implementing it in the correct way, and also doing it in a way that's actually benefiting them from a customer delivery perspective, because as we know in a lot of the InsurTech space as well, like we're sort of trying to promise a great customer experience, and that sometimes comes at a cost of poor underwriting results. So how do you blend the two such that you have the best underwriting results as well as a great customer experience that's hopefully moving the industry in the direction that people expect from companies like Amazon and so on?
Sure. No, it definitely makes sense that if you can understand where you're getting the lift, then you can help ultimately in turn your carrier clients to move forward. But I know you said, the information sharing is not as equal back and forth. So be kind of curious, Rashad, you sit at a primary carrier. How do you see your responsibility to share information with the reinsurers? And where do you kind of see some of those opportunities coming up? Since you're on the life side, you see more on the behavioral side?
Yeah, actually, so I think the first panel is really interesting. So when you abstract away the complexity, right? For underwriting specifically, is your input is data, then, whether you do it manually or through machine learning, you process it and you get a risk classification. With the legacy carriers, it's not necessarily like new data, it's actually existing data, but good data. Like, the struggle is actually finding clean data, usable data, and life in particular is more complex because an event takes place over decades, not right away. So that's been our challenge. So last couple of years, I've been doing underwriting innovation. So one of our models is actually live now to automate underwriting. But we're being very thoughtful and methodical about it, as opposed to just going ahead and putting it. So there's a manual process that's being in parallel going with the actually machine learning classification. And I think that's what a lot of the life insurers will do. They're not going to go, from 0 to 10 right away. They're going to take a risk-based approach, go, step by step, potentially have a parallel approach where the underwriters are actually, classifying alongside a machine learning model, for the actual classification. So it's not necessarily like new data, but it's existing data, but good data. Data is a blessing and a curse. With legacy carriers, they have a lot of data, but a lot of it is not clean. A lot of it has a lot of duplication issues, just overall quality issues.
Yeah, so Rashad, I kind of feel like a little bit of an air of conservatism here. I'm not going out there. I'm not pulling that DNA data that the founders in Israel are selling to me. I'm trying to figure out what I got and make it better. While Grant's kind of on the other side, he's saying, hey, I want to get access to what some of my carriers have and help them. But Lynn, being kind of the solution provider in between, maybe you can help arbitrate. What are you seeing from your clients? Is the problem more on the access side? Is it more on the cleaning side, and what have you been able to kind of create some projects on recently?
Okay, I think it sort of runs the gamut, right? To your point, for the legacy clients that are out there, just getting the data in a way that, the data that they have today in a way that's consumable, that's measurable, that they can do something with is really important. And what we're seeing on, I would say, from the other side with some greenfield carriers, think about agriculture and being able to not only just take the geospatial data that's out there, but also use sound and using models with sound. That's what we're seeing, actually. Some clients come out. So, for example, I'm a farmer. You put IoT sensors in the soil so you can measure what my saturation of soil might be. You're also checking the sound of the fields to see about the health of the field. So we're seeing some of that also happening where you're using new data sources and different types of data than we've seen traditionally in these new models, greenfield.
Yeah, no, I really like the concept of greenfield. I mean, we heard from Magana on her perspective on proxy, but we didn't hear from her on her knowledge on cannabis. So I bet the cannabis insurers probably want to combine Lynn's sound data, and we can see some really interesting things. No worries about proxy because the crops are not going to be upset with you.
Right. And Meghna and I could go to the field probably and do some empirical data.
Yeah, do some farming, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I want to transition a bit in terms of using the data, because it seems like one of the themes, whether it's access or the existing data you have, it's about how to make the best use of it so it's practical within your organization. So Grant, I think maybe you're a good place to start, since we're talking a little bit on the geospatial side. One lens of the data, right, is flat files. You see the ground. The other lens is like three-dimensional. We had a company pitch earlier today called Ecopia that created creates a digital twin of the world. So how do you see some of these artificial realities or virtual realities as an opportunity to be able to better use that geospatial data?
So first and foremost, I mean, I imagine definitely in CAT modeling, that's going to be a place where there's going to be improvements of being able to better simulate the environment of what's actually causing the damages. I still would say, I mean, I'll go back to, I wouldn't get too worked up over, AR or VR by any means, as much as just the execution part of it in terms of the flat files are still not being utilized to the full extent. So getting literally the structured data from this new geospatial information, for example, would still be highly important to the extent that you're properly integrating it in your business flow. So I think we're still on a long journey, and these new tools around AR and VR, they can be really helpful. But on the insurance side, I still think we're a long ways from doing it. I will say where I think there's more concrete value right now is more around on the actual primary customer side, where there's more efforts around training and development, specifically, let's say within workers' comp, where they can actually help people better learn the process that they'll be going through in a more labor-intensive job, and then help to reduce the workers' compensation losses that are happening in the field.
Sure. So it sounds like to me that ultimately most AR, VR stuff is a shiny object and we should keep far away. We shouldn't have our fund invest in it. But, if someone's in workers' comp, they want to use it for training, it can be practically applicable to the policyholder. Maybe there's some loss control impacts there. Yeah.
No, I like to say, look, insurance, what are we about? We're about managing and quantifying risk. And part of that is trying to help reduce risk for our end customers, right? That's how we improve the world as a whole, right? I'm a little bit of a still cynical, where I believe in all the purity of insurance, but that part of it is still valid to me. And so I think that's an important point that we should say. If we know these tools are available, maybe it's still not applicable so much on the underwriting or pricing side, but it could be very valid and helpful for the primary insured risk.
Yeah, so I'm still sitting on your side on the optimism, but maybe we can see which side Rashad sits on, optimistic or pessimistic. So, Rashad, I mean, the ultimate dream of all the life insurers here is to have every policyholder outlive their term policies. So you talked about, you have this data year 1, year 5, year 20 that's kind of moving along. Where do you see ways that you can kind of pick out year 5 and see what's going to make it so one of your policyholders can live another 15 years, or maybe hopefully non-renew somewhere in between?
Well, I'm an optimist, right? I'm an angel investor, right? So as an angel investor, you have to be an optimist. You have to think that, if I invest $10,000, it's going to turn to $1 million, right? That's why you angel invest. But, to answer your question, I think, life insurance is a great business, especially with all the demographic trends that are happening, right? Modern medicine is improving, every day, right? You talked about DNA tests. I think we're going to have precision medicine like in the next decade or so. So life insurance is a great business to be in because, your risk classification may say a policyholder may live to 80, but because of all the advances in technology and modern medicine, they live beyond 100. So that's like another 20-year of premiums you're collecting, right? That you didn't really account for. So overall, I think everything that's happening in society with medicine, as an insurer, you're gonna, reap the benefit of it as a life insurance carrier. So.
All right, so it seems like we got 2 optimists on the panel up here. The question is, can we go 3-0 or is it 2-1? So, Lynn, hopefully maybe you can come over to my pessimism side of things.
I'm on the optimistic side.
Well, let's see. Well, maybe we can give you one that you're not super optimistic on. So on the prep call, when we were talking with David from Salonis, one of the things that he had talked about is, data is not just in underwriting. And I guess I have the fortunate advantage of handicapping the room since I saw all the attendees on the list that, less than 3% of you guys have claims in the title. So if you're not claims in the title, how can the underwriters talk with you and pull data? So the question for you, Lynn, is, do you believe that carriers are ready, and are you optimistic that the underwriters in this room are ready to kind of cross the chasm and pull the data from the claims and use it as kind of one of the fundamental thinkings in their core model?
So today they do use claims data, but I think to the point, and it's an important part of the whole risk management of underwriting a risk. So I think there is opportunity. Even in the ARVR. So one of the things that we're doing at EPAM is actually heavily invested in the ARVR space to take that claim information, also bring it to the underwriting. We're using that from a risk management perspective, and we're also using it for claim adjudication. So I think there is opportunity. Again, most of the information today is like, it's more prospective. So I'm looking at the losses that happen. We need to start looking at that data in a way that gives us the insights so that I can be, forward thinking about, be more insightful about the risk. And part of that is going to be that claim data.
Well, there you have it. We have 3 optimists on the panel here. So if you guys are thinking about the future, you have your oracles here. So one of the things that we had talked about in the prep was the concept that, data doesn't exist in a vacuum. There's a lot of opportunities for layering. And I know when Chris was up here earlier, he talked about how Hippo is using a lot of different data sources that are typically not that available from policyholders in terms of information about the actual homeowner's house themselves and some of the water sensors that they're getting to implement. So I guess, Rashad, where do you see the analog between, what Hippo is doing on the homeowner side, empowering policyholders to protect themselves, and on the life insurance side, empowering individuals to protect their health?
Yeah, I think one of the areas where I see a lot of opportunity is, activity data. So like if you wear Apple Watch or, some sort of device, you could kind of track your activity level, how active you are, exercise habit, things like that. I think there's a lot of opportunities there. I think you have to be careful with life insurances. It is highly regulated, right? A lot of the underwriting is done based on health data. There's HIPAA laws. I think it was Mega, who mentioned that the regulators really haven't caught up to using, ML, machine learning, AI. Some of those policies will come, but if you as a carrier, if you voluntarily share your data, like your health tracking data, and it shows higher level of activity, can that potentially bring down your premium? I think that'll be interesting. So that's an area I think is worth exploring, and it's going to get explored in the next few years.
Yeah, so it sounds like a lot of the layering here is about getting the right permissions from your policyholders, and if anything, passing more back to them than they're passing to you. So Grant, I'm kind of curious your perspective on where you see this layering with the policyholders, especially on commercial enterprise side.
Yeah, so I guess playing off that, one of the interesting items from earlier call too, I guess, comes back to, in my mind, I'm an actuary by trade, just for reference points, so you can take that good or bad. But I think about access and incentives, access to the data and how we're using it, as well as the incentives behind it. And so I'm also often sort of times thinking, okay, if I were to give more information to my insured, what are they going to do with it? I've worked with underwriters in the past, and they find ways to remove me from the risk pool. And the incentive is not there for me to be more transparent with the information that I have, and that applies to commercial risk as well. So one of the things we have to be more, I guess, better as an industry is basically how we incorporate this new data in not necessarily a limiting way, but more sort of open-minded way, right? So the fact that someone is giving you more data doesn't mean that they're worse. You should be using it and providing, if anything, a penalty for the customers that don't do that, right? And so opting is clearly a huge thing on the personal side, and that's still the case for commercial. But the fact that the information was available on Yelp for one restaurant, not another restaurant, does not mean the restaurant that doesn't have a Yelp review is worse. Maybe the fact they don't have one is enough of an indicator on its own. But yeah, so I think that's a key piece in terms of just how we incentivize. And this goes back to also in the reinsurance space. What is the incentive for the primary insurers to give better visibility and transparency into the portfolios that they're trying to get reinsurance placements for?
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely a balance, and you don't want to penalize your policyholders if they're willing to share. But I think Leandro would probably have a better perspective on that if there's a Yelp review for a small business, whether it's going to work out or not. So maybe we ask him that one.
I'll give you one fun anecdote. Like if you were to underwrite me as a homeowner and you pulled the permits, you'll see that I did the water heater, right? I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, right? But the fact that I did the process of actually pulling the permit now makes that information available for someone underwriting me, which they might view in a negative light, even though many people don't do that, right? Or don't require it. So information needs to be viewed in context.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's only going to become more prevalent. So really bringing this back to the beginning about there's a lot out there, and now we really have to take the time to decipher what's useful, what's not useful, and figure out what's most productive for us. So I think, Lynn, you work on a kind of wide range of projects. I'm curious your perspective. What is needed more? Do underwriters need more help with taking things off their plate so they can consider more data, so they need more automation? Or do they need more raw processing power to put that information in a readable form?
What I've been addressing from an underwriting perspective really has been sort of this concept of the pane of glass, trying to get the underwriter to really do the art of the possible. And that includes, so a lot of the automation, I think Bastian talked about it, unstructured data coming in so that I can actually take away those administrative things, because an underwriter today is much, it's not just underwriting, right? You're a salesperson, you're a data scientist, you're an actuary in some cases. All those roles are part of what that job is. And I think it is getting them the data that they need, so it doesn't take months or whatever. I generally work in the commercial space, so a lot of those commercial risk management risks take a very long time to just get the information together. So I do think it's getting them the information so that they can make good decisions with the information that they have.
So Grant, thoughts on that? Like, what would you like Lynn to take off your plate if you had a magic wand?
Well, I guess I would challenge our industry, and you're seeing a parallel on the tech side to some extent, to use it for good. In terms of like, I would prefer to have a world where we have better personalization of the insurance products that we offer, rather than these sort of more standard boxes that then we sort of remove or change our price on. And so rather than using those as our levers to have a little bit more flexibility of providing better insurance coverage that really fits the needs of the customers, and presumably the more you take off the plate of the underwriters and the actuaries in terms of doing the more routine type of things, the more they're able to focus on the potentially product development, which is going to help, I think, move the needle in terms of just the perception of insurance in this world.
Rashad, thoughts on what you would want taken off your plate?
Well, I do a lot of unstructured things, so I think it's going to be difficult to replace me. But, I'm really bullish about AI as a technology. I was recently listening to Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, saying that how AI, ML, whatever you want to call it, is going to be an augment, right? So there's going to be, like 5 years, 10 years from now, there's going to be an assistant kind of guides you along your work, right? So not only will you have more capacity to do maybe these higher value things, but also, someone you could actually, like a machine that you could rely on to generate new ideas, right? Take care of the annoying administrative tasks that you kind of have to deal with now. So I'm super bullish on just usage of technology and just being able to do more, maybe higher value things as everything evolves. And underlying all of that is data. Without data, there is no AI, right? Without data, there is no assistant. So super bullish on just overall how work is going to evolve in the next 5 to 10 years.
Well, I'll keep that in mind, both an optimist and sure that nothing's going to replace his job no matter what we develop here. So we have time for probably one more question. So we'll do a 30-minute lightning for each of you, 30 seconds for each of you, maybe 30 minutes in the hall. So good follow-up. So what's one piece of advice that you would leave the carriers with that's going to help them decipher the signal from the noise? So Lynn, 30 seconds.
I think to be innovative and to really stretch yourselves to think in that way, some of the things that we've talked about already, but having data and using that as a basis for the decisioning, I think that's going to be really important. Again, I have a lot of clients who they're drowning in the amount of information that they're getting. And so what are the things that are really impactful is really challenging for them. And I think that's kind of wading through that.
Rashad?
Yeah, I think for me, it really comes down to execution, right? Just like anything else in life. A lot of big firm, small firm, they all have grand vision where they want to go. My advice would be to start small, right? Even on your data set, start with the sample set as opposed to try to boil the ocean, and incrementally like move the needle forward. You have a lot higher chance of success doing that as opposed to making a grand statement while in like 3 years you want it 100% automated and so on and so forth. So start small, do it incrementally, and always tie it to like a business value. There's a lot of firms, they have like large data science team doing a lot of experiments without any business value associated with it. So don't be that. Try to tie everything to a business value. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to.
Grant?
That's not one of the angel investments. So first, Rashad stole mine with regard to execution, but I will say like my guidance or advice would be around it's a journey. The ideas, the information that's out there, like it's really not that new. It's just getting more digitized. It's just a matter of like we are now figuring out ways to utilize it within our insurance process as a whole. So from that perspective, don't necessarily be negative when something doesn't work because a lot of times they aren't going to work, but stay positive and keep on trying and experimenting because that's how we're going to innovate.
All right, there you have it. Impact, start small, don't be negative, otherwise you'll upset these optimists. So that rounds out our panel. Round of applause for the panelists. All right, and I will pass it back to Roy.
Thank you. Hey, with that, that concludes our session for today, and 3 takeaways. And David, jump in if I missed anything, because I know you're going to eyeball me in the side there, give me the side eye. Just real quick, as we wrap up, first of all, thank you guys for all coming out. Some people came from very far away too. There was a lot of Canadians here today. I realized. You heard the accent? Did you hear it? No, I did. Anyway, so thank you all guys coming out. Thank the staff here for helping us out too as well, because without them we can't do anything. And David and Tony, yeah, they deserve a round of applause. So thank you. 2 other things is that, hey, I'm going to do it again because I pushed the events pretty hard. Hey, we have our big event in March. Please come out to that, as well as go on the website. Check out Slopes as well as you're out there. So we have a lot of things on our website that I probably forget to mention. So check out the website. It's always updated and always right. And then lastly, we're gonna get out there and do some more networking and mingling. Thank you for being part of the community and continue the networking out there. We have pizza and some drinks open there. All right, thank you.